2 days after my son was born, a hospital social worker sat beside my bed and asked whether I understood that my mother-in-law had requested temporary guardianship of my newborn. I thought she'd walked into the wrong room. My baby was asleep on my chest. I still had a hospital band on my wrist from an emergency C-section. She says there are concerns about your ability to care for the baby during recovery, the social worker said gently. My name is Jenna Morales. I was 32, and until that morning, I thought my biggest problem with my mother-in-law was that she didn't understand boundaries. Before I tell you what was in the folder she brought to my hospital room, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Linda had raised my husband Evan alone. She reorganized our cabinets without asking, called our guest room Grandma's room, and posted pregnancy updates about my body in a family group chat Evan had added her to. At my baby shower, she unveiled a cake reading "Welcome, Baby Edward," her ex-husband's name, not the name we'd chosen. In front of 40 guests, she smiled and said pregnancy hormones made women emotional. I went home early from my own shower. Stay with me, because the document the social worker showed me 2 days later wasn't a spontaneous panic. It was a plan Linda had been building for months. At 37 weeks, my blood pressure spiked and I needed an emergency C-section. Linda held Mateo for 40 minutes while I was still numb from the surgery. When a nurse tried to bring him back for feeding, Linda said, "She needs rest. I can give him a bottle." I said I wanted my baby. The next morning she arrived with a packed suitcase, announcing she'd move in for 6 weeks. "I have a husband," I said. "My son has to work," she answered. That's when the social worker appeared with the petition. Linda had prepared it with an attorney, claiming I had a history of severe mental illness. Actually, depression I'd experienced in college over a decade earlier, no living relatives, and an unstable home, backed by photos of laundry on our sofa and my prescription bottles on the nightstand. Blood pressure medication and prenatal vitamins. Attached was a page Evan had signed, authorizing Linda to make medical decisions if I became incapacitated. I asked him why. He said Linda told him it was just a backup plan and he hadn't read it closely. "You were in pain," he said. "So you gave your mother power over my baby because I was recovering from surgery?" The social worker interrupted. "She is allowed to be upset. The first time anyone in Evan's family had ever said that to me." The hospital confirmed I was competent and Mateo's legal parent. Linda had no authority. When told, she began shouting in the hallway. Security escorted her out. She sent 23 messages in 2 hours, warning Evan he'd regret it if he let me take our son home without her. I didn't go home with Evan. My friend Priya offered her guest room, and the hospital helped me build a safety plan. "I made a mistake," Evan said. "You can't take my son away over paperwork." "The paperwork isn't the whole problem," I told him. "The problem is you've spent years treating my boundaries as obstacles between your mother and what she wants." Here's a question I'd genuinely like your take on. If your partner signed away decisions about your child without asking you, even claiming it was just in case, would that be forgivable to you? Or is that already too far? We later learned the guardianship plan started when I was 7 months pregnant. Linda had told her attorney I was emotionally unstable and Evan was overwhelmed by my controlling behavior. She'd taken a private college medical record from a filing cabinet Evan kept at home, without permission, and drafted a proposed schedule giving herself 3 overnight visits a week. This wasn't panic. It was preparation. I hired attorney Ruth Delgado, who sent Linda a formal demand to return my medical documents and stop presenting herself as Mateo's guardian. We changed our locks, added cameras, and password-protected every medical and daycare record. Evan started individual therapy and began, slowly, to understand how his childhood had trained him to manage Linda's every emotion, apologizing when she was angry, sharing information that wasn't his to share, mistaking obedience for love. For 3 months, I lived at Priya's while we attended marriage counseling. Evan removed everything Linda had placed in our home, including the nursery sign reading Edward James that had been sitting in our garage. Linda filed the guardianship petition anyway. By then, we had months of hospital records, doctor's notes, and documentation. The judge dismissed it quickly, warning her that unsupported allegations and misuse of private medical records could bring sanctions. Outside the courtroom, Linda told Evan, "I hope you're happy choosing her over your family." He answered, Jenna and Mateo are my family. You asked me to choose your control over their safety. It was the sentence I'd waited years to hear. Linda didn't speak to us for 7 months. During that time, Evan did the unglamorous work of earning trust back, attending every appointment, sharing nothing without permission, learning to care for Mateo without calling his mother for instructions. When she eventually requested mediation, her apology named exactly what she'd done. I tried to use the court to take authority over your child because I believed I knew better than you. We allowed supervised visits at a family center, no overnights, no medical portal access. Linda never became the grandmother she'd imagined, but she became one who finally understood that love doesn't create legal ownership. Mateo is 4 now. He knows her as Grandma Linda. Someday, if it becomes relevant, we'll tell him the truth carefully. Recovery does not cancel competence. Exhaustion does not erase motherhood. And giving birth does not make a woman's boundaries optional. If this story kept you listening, subscribe to Unheard Drama Stories and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and whether you think Evan deserved a second chance.